Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Sharnarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we are reading Canto 4, Chapter 14, texts 38 to 40. Text 38. Evam rishanta rishayo dhavatam sarvato disham pamsu samuttito bhurish choranam abhilumpatam evam rishantarashayo dhavatam sarvato disham pamsu samuttito bhurish choranam abhilumpatam evam rishantarashayo dhavatam sarvato disham pamsu samuttito bhurish choranam abhilumpatam. Evam rishantarashayo choranam abhilumpatam evam rishantarashayo dhavatam sarvato disham pamsu samutito bhurish choranam abhilumpatam. Evam, thus, mrishantaha, while considering rishaya, the great saintly persons, dhavatam, running, sarvata disham, from all directions, pamsuhu, dust, samuttitaha, arose, burihi, much, choranam, from thieves and rogues, abhilumpatam, engaged in plundering, Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, when the great sages were carrying on their discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions. This storm was caused by the running of thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. Purport: thieves and rogues simply await some political upset in order to take the opportunity to plunder the people in general. To keep thieves and rogues inactive in their profession, a strong government is always required. Text 39 to 40. Tad upadravam agyaya lokasya vasulumpatam bhartari uparate tasmin anyonyam cha jigamsatam chora prayam janapadam hina sattvam arajakam loka navarayan chakta api taddosha darshinaha. Translation. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order, and consequently, there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbances by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. Purport: the saintly persons and great sages killed King Vena out of emergency, but they did not choose to take part in the government in order to subdue the uprising of thieves and rogues, which took place after the death of King Vena. It is not the duty of brahmanas and saintly persons to kill, although they may sometimes do so in the case of an emergency. They could kill all thieves and rogues by the prowess of their mantras, but they thought it the duty of Kshatriya kings to do so. Thus they reluctantly did not take part in the killing business. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Yam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpaturubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada explains that the Vedic social system, which is known as Varnashram, he compares that social system in relationship to a body. Right? We're all aware of that the Brahmanas are considered to be the head of the social body, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms. So the arms and the head, they have a mutual relationship. The head can think, but it can't act, it can't do anything, it can't do any work. Whereas the arms, they can do work, but they can't think for themselves. So the Kshatriyas are said to be the arms, and the Brahmanas are said to be the head. So both of them need to work together. Srila Prabhupada also gave the example between India and America in a similar sense. He said that America was the blind man, because although America has advanced technology and all different types of means and ways, still they don't have spiritual vision, so that they're blind. But India had, or Bharatavarsha had the vision of spiritual life, but it was invalid in the sense that it didn't have, money and economic development and all that sort of stuff, like America did. So if the blind man sits on the back of the lame man, then they could go together. They could walk across together. The lame man could direct the blind man where to walk. So there needs to be a mutual relationship between the two. So Kshatriyas and Brahmanas need to work together according to the Vedic social system. Why is it that the Kshatriyas were not allowed to rule by themselves, for themselves? We also know that Brahmanas are predominantly in the mode of goodness, or they are in the mode of goodness. Kshatriyas are in the mode of passion. Vaishyas are in the mode of mixed passion and ignorance. And Shudras are in the mode of ignorance. Now, being Kshatriyas, like King Vena is a Kshatriya, he's in the mode of passion. So what does Bhagavad Gita say about the mode of passion? In the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajaguna samudbhava, Mahashano mahapapma, Vidyenam ihavairanam. When Arjuna asks Krishna that I'm forced to act in ways that I don't want to act, what is causing me to act in this way? To act sinfully. And Krishna says, simply, it is lust, which later on transforms into wrath or anger. And where does anger and lust come from? Krishna says, Rajaguna samudbhava. It comes from the mode of passion. What that means is that because Kshatriyas are in the mode of passion, they're subject to anger and lust if they're not checked, if they're not directed in the proper direction. And then in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pujayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho bhujayate. Again there he says that contemplation, the objects of senses, leads to attachment to them, and it leads to the same two things. It leads to lust, which then is transformed into wrath or anger. And then he continues the analysis further, and he says, Krodhat bhavati sammohat, sammohat smriti vibrama, smriti brahmshat buddhinasha, buddhinashat pranashriti. So what happens then? After anger and lust, one is bewildered, one is put into delusion. One's memory of the Shastra and what the Shastra says, what should be done, what should not be done in a particular situation, that gets wiped out, and one's intelligence gets lost. And one simply stays on the material platform. So you can see, if the Kshatriyas who are in the mode of passion are not given counsel and advice by the Brahmanas who are in the mode of goodness, they're subject to degrade into lust, and then anger, and then they will be bewildered, their intelligence will be lost, they won't govern the kingdom according to the Shastra. That's what the mode of passion does. And therefore, the system that Manu has given us is that the Kshatriyas should be guided by the Brahmanas in the mode of goodness so that they don't degrade. And we see here, in the case of Vena, what's happening. He's simply covered by lust, anger, envy. He's made so many mistakes on part of rulership of the kingdom. First of all, he blasphemed the Brahmanas, calling them less intelligent when they're supposed to be guiding the Kshatriyas. Then he stopped the yagyas, performance of sacrifices. And of course, as we know, Nat Bhavanti Bhutani, Krishna mentions there again in the 3rd chapter, that if sacrifices are stopped, the rains are stopped. And if the rains are not there, then there's no food grains for humanity. So it gives rise to all sorts of adibautik klesh, miseries which come upon because of natural disturbances controlled by the demigods. So he blasphemed the Vaishnavas, he stopped the Vedic sacrifices. He said that all demigods reside in his body, which is a claim that only Krishna can make. And he says, stop worshipping anyone else, simply worship me. Now, it's true that the king is known as Naradeva. The king is known as the earthly representative of God. But he should rule the kingdom exactly as that, as a representative of God. But Vena, what he's proposing is that everyone should worship him exclusive of worshipping the Supreme Personality of God. In other words, he's indirectly denying the existence of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, and he's saying, simply worship me. I'm maintaining you. So if you go and worship someone else, then he said that you're an unchaste woman. So it was very heavy. And as a result, the Brahmanas got angry and they cursed him. So that's the king. That's the Kshatriyas, why they need to be guided by the Brahmanas. Now let's look at the Brahmanas in this example. Bhagavad Gita says, 18th chapter, that the Brahmanas, they have various qualities in the mode of goodness. Samo, Dhammo, Tapa, Shocham, Shantir, Arjavam, Evacha. Jnanam, Vijnanam, Astikyam, Brahma, Karma, Svabhavajam. Sama means that they're equipoised in all situations. Dhamma means that they have controlled their senses in their mind. They engage in austerities, tapa, shocham, they're clean both externally and internally. Then kshantir, tolerance, they're very tolerant. Titikshava. Arjavam, arjavam means they're very honest. Jnana and Vijnana, they study the Vedas, so they get knowledge and they apply the knowledge which is in the Vedas to get realization. And then finally, they are religious. Arjavam. Kshantir Arjavam Evacha, Jnana Vijnana Astikyam. Astikyam. Astikyam means that they're religious. But here we see in this situation that they're acting contrary to their nature. They're acting as Kshatriyas. Gita says that the qualities of the Kshatriyas are Shauryam Tejo Dhritir Daksham Yuddhe Cha Palayanam. Shauryam means heroism. Here we see a group of Brahmanas who are normally just doing their tapasya and their sacrifices, acting very heroically. How do they kill King Vena? They just chant hum. Hum. That's what Bhagavatam says. They chant hum together. And that sound vibration kills Vena. So they're acting very heroically. Tejo, very valiantly. Dhritir, with great determination. Daksham, very expertly. So these are all qualities of Kshatriyas, which Brahmanas are not supposed to follow. But here we see that the Brahmanas are acting like Kshatriyas. So why is that? What is Srila Prabhupada saying? When can Brahmanas act in this way? Srila Prabhupada says that the saintly persons and the great sages killed King Vena out of emergency. So in an emergency situation, this is allowed. Bhagavad Gita says, elsewhere it says, that it is what is that one? Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharma svanushtitat swadharma nidanam shreya paradharma bhayavaha. So what this means, what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that it is best that one engages in one's own occupational duties rather than taking up someone else's occupational duties. Destruction in the course of performing your own occupational duties is better than being successful in someone else's occupational duty, Krishna says. That means if your conditioning according to the modes of material nature is that you're in the mode of goodness, then you should practice Krishna consciousness in the mode of goodness. If you're predominantly in the mode of passion, you should practice Krishna consciousness in the mode of passion. Don't try to act like if a Brahmana tries to act like a Vaishya, it's not going to last for a very long time. Or if a Shudra tries to act like a Kshatriya, that situation is not going to last for a very long time. But Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is described further in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter as well, where Narad Muni is speaking. He's saying that in an emergency situation, a Brahmana is allowed to act in the capacity of a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. A Kshatriya is allowed to act in the capacity of a Vaishya or a Shudra, and a Vaishya is allowed to act in the capacity of a Shudra. And then Srila Prabhupada goes on to say that when you transcend the modes of material nature, you can act in any way. It doesn't matter because you're not conditioned anymore. And he gives two examples. He gives the example of Vishwamitra. So who is Vishwamitra? Which Varna did Vishwamitra belong to? Kshatriya. He was the king. And then one day he sees the great power of Vashishta, who is a Brahma Rishi. He has this little cow, the Kamadhenu. And from the Kamadhenu comes unlimited numbers of soldiers to kill Vishwamitra's army. And he sees, wow, this Brahman is just sitting here doing his meditation, and he's just in a little hermitage, and I have a great kingdom, and just from this little cow that he owns, anything he wants is coming. So let me also become a Brahmana. So he does tapasya and he becomes a Brahmana. Srila Prabhupada gives Vishwamitra as an example of someone who acted eventually beyond the modes of material nature, and he acted from being a Kshatriya to becoming a Brahman. And one more example Srila Prabhupada gives is Parshuram. So who is Parshuram? Which Varna is Parshuram? Parshuram is a Kshatriya? He's a Brahmana. Parshuram is actually a Brahmana. But he acted in the capacity of a Kshatriya, killing the Kshatriyas 21 times or 22 times over. So these are two examples that Srila Prabhupada cites. Again, in an emergency situation, it's allowed. Now, one other thing is that the Brahmanas here, in this particular pastime, they did not act in the way of Kshatriyas very willingly. They bided their time and they tried to glorify the king, first of all. They tried to speak in a very pleasing way to King Vena because they wanted him to stay in power. They wanted him to make the decisions. They didn't want the situation to degrade into an emergency situation where they would have to kill the king. And that is explained in the Mahabharata. For example, when Krishna, he acts as a Shanti Dut, he acts as a peace messenger before the Kurukshetra war starts. So the Pandavas send Lord Krishna to meet the Kauravas. Lord Krishna enters the Kuru assembly before Dhritarashtra, Dushasan, Duryodhan, Karna, everyone. And according to Vedic, negotiation, there's 4 things that you can do before outright violence and war. The first thing is called Sama. The second thing is called Dana. Then the third thing is called Beda. And lastly, it's called Danda. Okay? So Sama means conciliation. It means that you speak very pleasing words to the other party and try to coax them to act in a way that you want to act. So what happens? Krishna goes and he tells the assembly that the Kurus and the Pandavas are brothers. Why should they fight amongst each other? There's no need for this bloodshed. There's no need for this violence. You asked the Pandavas to go into exile for 13 years. Now they've already gone and it's already almost completed. Just give them something and just let them rule. You're all family. Why should you have the blood of your family members? So Krishna tried Sama, but it didn't work. So then he tried Dana. Dana means giving charity, giving gifts to the opposing party. Again, to try to get them to do what you want. So what did Krishna say? He said, at least give the Pandavas 5 villages to rule. They're Kshatriyas, they need to rule something, so just give them 5 villages. And Duryodhana's famous response is, I won't even give them that much land which is covered by the tip of a needle. So Dana failed as well. Then came Beda. Beda means causing dissension amongst the enemy, causing a rift amongst the enemy. So what did Krishna say? Krishna said that the Kauravas are good. In general, the Kauravas are good. But there's only one Kaurava which is bad, and that's Duryodhana. He's the black sheep of his family. Therefore, the war doesn't have to take place if simply we can eliminate Duryodhana. If simply he can give up his rulership. We don't have to get into this war. Just put Duryodhana aside. Let there be a battle between Duryodhana and maybe Bhima, because Bhima was holding his anger for so long. Right? For 13 years he was holding his anger. He wanted to rip Duryodhana's head off. So let Bhima and Duryodhana fight and settle the scores. That also failed. Right? He wanted the rest 99 brothers of Duryodhana to go against Duryodhana. But that failed as well. So lastly, what happened? Danda came. Danda means the rod. So then Krishna said, there's no use, there's no hope in having reconciliation between the Pandavas and Kauravas. The Kauravas are not interested. There's only one way to resolve the situation, and that is outright war. And that's exactly how the Kurukshetra war came to be fought, because of that reason. So we can see Krishna is trying to remedy the situation. He's trying one by one to try to remedy the situation. It doesn't work, then he gets the rod. Same thing the Brahmanas are doing as well. They're not power hungry. They want things to function in the proper way. So they don't just approach Vena in an angry way. They try to please Vena. They try to glorify him. They try to appeal to his ego as a king. But it doesn't work. He just blasphemes them. And such a situation, of course, it's true in Vedic history. It's also true in ancient history as well. I just recall because I used to study ancient history way back in high school, and I have some very vivid memories from Roman history and Greek history and all that sort of stuff, of similar situations happening. Srila Prabhupada himself quotes examples of historical personalities like Napoleon Bonaparte. He talks about Julius Caesar. He talks about Alexander the Great. So everyone knows Julius Caesar, right? He's the Roman emperor. Actually, he's the dictator of Rome. And what happened, we'll talk about how he died, similar to how King Vena died as well, and with the actions that he took, which led to his death. So in Rome at that time, there was a three-party rulership. It was called the triumvirate. So three sort of high government officials used to rule the whole kingdom. So they were called the triumvirate. And two of the people on this triumvirate, one was Julius Caesar, and the other one was his son-in-law, and his name was Pompey. And they were very good allies, they were very good friends, very, very close friends. Of course, they were family as well, because Julius Caesar's daughter was Pompey's wife. Okay, so they're very close. But then over a period of time, Rome started to degrade. There was a lot of political unrest. There was a lot of backlash amongst the lower class in Rome. And then what happened is that Pompey, instead of having that alliance with the triumvirate, the three rulers of Rome, there was dissension amongst the three. He started to, basically put himself aside, and he started to form allies with the more rich people in society. And this really angered Julius Caesar, because he was getting support from a different group of people who were more powerful, more wealthy. And Julius Caesar thought that, yes, although he's family, although he's my great ally, still he can't be doing this. I have to wage war against him. So you can see this happens in Kali Yuga, that even within the family there's war and killing. We see that in Bhagavad Gita. We see that at the end of the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Shukadev Goswami predicts that as Kali Yuga progresses, the kings who are ruling a country, or the politicians who are ruling a country, will be killed and murdered by their own family. Shukadev Goswami explains that. So then, famously, Julius Caesar, he crosses one river in Rome. It's called the Rubicon River. And he mentions one famous quote. He says, the die is set. So that's a saying in English, the die is set. The die is set. When someone says that the die is set, that means now things can't go back the other way. You've overstepped the mark, you have to continue with your decision. So he crosses this river called the Rubicon River with his army, and he has this really bloody clash with Pompey. Severe casualties. And Pompey's army gets defeated. And Pompey, what does he do? He flees to Egypt. Right? He goes across the Mediterranean Sea and he enters Egypt. And there in Egypt, there was a great pharaoh, a great king. His name was Ptolemy. Probably heard of the name if you played Age of Empires or something. Age of Mythology. So Ptolemy was the pharaoh of Egypt. And what he does is he actually kills Pompey. He thinks that I want to gain the favor of the powerful ruler of Rome, Julius Caesar, So let me kill this person whom Julius Caesar hates so much, Pompey, and he kills Pompey in a very bad sort of way, in a really degrading way. The Pharaoh of Egypt, Ptolemy, kills Pompey. And then Julius Caesar comes to Egypt as well. So that's where you hear all these stories about Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. This is why he comes. He comes because he's seeing where does Pompey fled. He's fled to Egypt. And he comes and he finds out that Ptolemy has killed Pompey in this really gruesome way. Now, instead of becoming happy, because Pompey is his enemy, right? He's the enemy of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar actually becomes very angry. He becomes very proud. He thinks, I'm such a great general. I was supposed to kill Pompey. Why has Ptolemy killed Pompey? And moreover, he's killed him in such a degrading way. So he has these conflicting thoughts. Pompey was his great friend, so he should have been killed in a very honorific way. And at the same time, I should have killed him. Why has Ptolemy killed him? So Julius Caesar becomes very, very angry. He becomes very, very proud. That's his turning point. That's his Vena moment, where he starts to act like King Vena. So instead of actually running the state affairs in Rome for the benefit of the citizens, he starts to become more of a dictator. He starts to push other people down, push other senators down in Rome. No one should take power, no one should come up. And he establishes himself as the prime dictator. Now what happens over time is because of him establishing the dictatorship in Rome, the Roman elites, they're known as the optimates, which literally translates to the best men in Rome. They're like the Brahminical class, similar to how we are hearing about here in King Vena's pastimes. They were not really Brahmanas because they were politicians, they were senators, but at the same time they were Brahminical because the optimates were responsible for giving counsel and guidance to the king, to the emperor of Rome. They start to get a bit uneasy because they know that they're going to start losing power. Julius Caesar has appointed himself as dictator. They're going to start losing power. So there's a conspiracy. Two of these senators, known as Brutus and Cassius, famous if you've studied ancient history, you would have heard of their names, Brutus and Cassius. They decide that on the middle of March, literally 15th of March, just like how in our Vedic calendar, we have Saptami, Dashami, Tritiya, Dvitiya, the second day of the lunar fortnight like that. So in similar way, the Roman calendar has different names for different periods of the week and the different periods of the month. So there's the middle of the month is known as Ides, I-D-E-S. So they plan to murder Julius Caesar on the Ides of March, which means the 15th of March, when Julius Caesar steps into the Senate office and they hold a meeting just before he goes out to conquest some other Persia or something like that. These senators, and there's about 60 of them, they get together and they say, we need to get rid of this person, we need to assassinate this person. And Brutus and Cassius, they're the two senators that really conspire this, and they influence the other people. Again, so this is known as Bheda. There's a dissension amongst the Roman rulership. So that morning, Julius Caesar, he steps into the Senate office, and he's told by an oracle, he's told by a great seer, beware of the Ides of March, which means beware of the 15th of March. Something inauspicious is going to happen that day. And just like Vena, because he's proud, he just pushes that advice aside. I'm so great, nothing's going to happen to me. And he continues on. And then at one point in time, the senators, they ask him a question, like, is it okay if we release some slave or something that's been banished? And Julius Caesar just brushes aside, saying, no, that's the signal for the senators to come and attack him. So the senators, each one of these roughly 60 senators, were hiding daggers in their robes. And as soon as Julius Caesar goes like this, they start to attack him. It's mentioned that he was stabbed 23 times. 23 times he was stabbed, and he died there. So that's an example where the Brahminical class will act contrary to how they're supposed to act to put down a king if he's not ruling the state properly. And what to speak of Rome, what to speak of this Vedic history, It's happening today as well, even in modern history as well. Such things are happening. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is also about anger. That was spoken about a couple of purports before. Did the Brahmanas kill Vena out of anger? Srimad Bhagavatam says that yes, they killed Vena out of anger, but then there's two different types of anger. There's destructive anger and there's controlled anger. Destructive anger means that you're acting out of passion. You're acting like really you want to get revenge on someone. And the examples of that is, for example, the Daksha Yagya, right? Where Lord Shiva, he refused to stand up. So Daksha, he got very upset. He cursed Lord Shiva's followers, and then Lord Shiva's followers in return counter-cursed Daksha and the Brahmanas, and all hell broke loose. And then finally, the end result of that was that Daksha's head was cut off. And it was replaced by the head of a goat. Daksha felt very ashamed and very embarrassed to live like that, so he commits suicide. So that's a result of destructive anger. Destructive anger means when you act out of in a destructive way, you can't take back the action. It has to degrade down into something catastrophic. Another example is Durvasa Muni, right? When Ambarish Maharaj was there, and apparently Ambarish Maharaj disrespected Durvasa Muni by breaking his fast without feeding first Durvasa Muni. Again, he gets angry, pulls out a piece of his hair, a demon comes, and then Vishnu Sudarshan Chakra comes, starts chasing him everywhere. Destructive anger. So destructive anger means that you're not in control of your emotions. You allow your emotions to control you. You act out of the mode of passion. You act out of lust. And therefore the anger which comes as a result of lust must be destructive. The result must be catastrophic. There is a thing called controlled anger. Controlled anger means you are in control of your emotions. And you show your anger for a particular purpose. Just like if you've read Lilamrit, you'll see that, I think it was somewhere in Europe, Srila Prabhupada was installing a deity in one of the temples. And the disciples were inexperienced. And, things were late. And the press was there as well, the media was there as well, and Srila Prabhupada didn't want things to go in the wrong way. Everything should be done properly. But they didn't have the fruits for the yagya, things were going wrong. And then Srila Prabhupada was visibly upset. Of course, he wanted to chastise his disciples so that they serve Krishna in the proper way. And then someone in the audience, just some random person, looked at Srila Prabhupada and that he was upset, and then told Srila Prabhupada, you should just chant Hare Krishna. And what did Srila Prabhupada do? Did Srila Prabhupada get upset? No. He took out his bead bag, he put his hand in his bead bag, and he started chanting. So that is an example of controlled anger. Right? So Srila Prabhupada is fully in control of his emotions, and he's showing that just to rectify the mistakes of his disciples. Another example of controlled anger is what we're seeing here in this situation of Srimad Bhagavatam. The sages apparently are getting angry, and they're killing the king, they're killing King Vena, but it's not an all too destructive situation because they know how to remedy the situation, and we'll see that in a couple of verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. Even though the king is dead, they know how to remedy the situation by churning the king's body. They churn Vena's body because they want to protect, it's mentioned the semen that's flowing through from Dhruva Maharaj's lineage. They wanted to churn the body of King Vena and then produce the next king, essentially from his body. So they acted out of anger, but they know how to remedy the situation. So that's the difference between controlled anger and destructive anger. Destructive anger means it's just out of control. You can't bring the results back to square one. Whereas controlled anger means you show it for some time, you're in control of your emotions, and whatever happens as a result of showing that controlled anger, you can bring back again. You can rectify the situation. However, should devotees show anger in devotional service? Best is not to. There's two things that devotees can do. There's a story of Narada Muni. As we all know, Narada Muni, he goes around to different parts of the universe, initiates people, the most fallen people. He's Patita Pavan, and we are coming in his disciplic succession. And he brings people, different living entities, to Krishna consciousness. So once Narad Muni initiates a snake to be his disciple, a cobra. And the cobra initially, before taking the shelter of Narad Muni, of course the cobra is a very fearsome creature, the naga. Right? Everyone was scared of this naga. This naga was very violent. And everyone was the enemy of this naga. But Narad Muni comes, accepts him as a disciple, and instructs this snake, don't bite anyone. Go against your nature. Now you're fully Krishna conscious. Practice, chant Hare Krishna, and stop biting people. He tells the snake. So the snake listens to the instructions of his guru, Narada Muni, and he stops biting people. And he's just chanting Hare Krishna. And as the story goes, other people, they start to take advantage of the snake. Just see, the snake is no longer dangerous. So they start to throw stones at the snake. They start to grab the snake's tail and, wiggle him out and all that sort of stuff. And the snake is just tolerating, because he has the instruction not to bite from Narada Muni. And he gets very depressed. He gets very upset. And then he approaches Narada Muni and says, what can I do? You've instructed me not to bite, but now people are taking advantage of my, my peacefulness and my non-violence. What does Narada Muni instruct to the snake? He says, don't bite, but raise your hood. So that's what devotees should do. If at all devotees want to show anger, they should not actually get angry. They should simply raise their hood, just to frighten or push off the opposite party. Now that is dangerous. Still that is dangerous. Because if a snake raises his hood, what's going to happen next? It's very likely that the snake will bite, right? Or if someone, raises their hand as if they're going to hit someone, maybe in a controlled way, still, what's the likelihood that's going to happen? It's very likely that the hand will actually come down and hit the other person. So that's one way the devotees could do. They can just raise their hood, but it's not the best way. And we learned that from the pastime of Hanuman, right? Hanuman is glorified to be a devotee who showed anger in the service of Lord Ram by burning down the city of Lanka. But then if you read Ramayana, it says that after the city was completely burnt, he looks back and he starts to lament. He starts to get depressed. He thinks that out of anger, I've burnt this whole city down. Maybe Sita is also burnt in this fire. The same person that I came to protect, the same person that Lord Ramachandra had told me, see what's happening to her, how she's being held in captivity, if she's still alive. That same person, maybe I've killed because of my anger. So actually, devotees should not show anger. And I want to just conclude this class by giving the example between Narada Muni and Daksha. We were talking about Daksha before, the Daksha Yagya. Daksha, eventually, he commits suicide, right? Because of his goat head. Now, if you read the sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Daksha takes birth again. He takes birth again as the son of the Prachetas and the daughter of the moon god, the daughter of the trees. Her name is Marisha. So the Prachetas and Marisha, they unite to create Daksha. Daksha takes birth again. And it's explained that Daksha was again, in his second birth, tasked to create progeny. And he does intense tapasya. And his tapasya is so great that Vishnu comes with 10 arms to give him darshan, riding on Garuda, to give him benediction. And Vishnu himself instructs him, you continue this task of creating progeny because it's necessary to fill this material universe with living entities so that they can continue on fulfilling their desires. So that's what he does. He creates 10,000 sons called the Haryashvas. And he tells them that for you to become good grihastas, first of all, you have to do some tapasya. So these 10,000 sons go to a place called Narayan Saras, which is now in Pakistan. It's where the river Sindhu flows, which is also known as the river Indus. So this river Indus flows through modern-day Pakistan. And the place where this Indus river, Sindhu river, flows into the Indian Ocean, that place is known as Narayan Saras. So the Haryashas, they go there and they engage in tapasya. And who comes? Narada Muni comes. And he tells them a riddle. I can't recount that riddle, it's a bit complex. But he tells them a riddle and he makes them think, why waste so much time? Why engage in so much tapasya just to create progeny, just to do what everyone else is doing? The same tapasya that you're doing, tapo divyam putrkayena shutyam, you can do the same tapasya to liberate yourselves and go back home, back to Godhead. Anyway, you're doing tapasya, so why do tapasya for a material purpose? Might as well do tapasya for a spiritual purpose. And he convinces these 10,000 sons to become sannyasis. Now, what do you think Daksha felt? He feels extremely angry. All right? He's been instructed by Vishnu to create progeny. And still this guy, Narada Muni, comes along and convinces his son to take sannyas. So then, he's angry, of course, and then second time around, he creates 1,000 sons, known as the Savalashvas. Again, he tells them, go to the Narayan Saras, engage in tapasya, so you can become good grihasthas. This time, it's much more easier for Narada Muni. All he tells the Savalashvas is, you respect your elder brothers, right? So just follow in their footsteps. And that's exactly what they do. They have great respect for their elder brothers, so Narada Muni just tells them, follow in the footsteps of your brothers, and they also take sannyas. Then Daksha becomes really red hot in anger. And he approaches Narada Muni. And he tells him, you have committed a very great sinful act. You are a so-called sadhu. Actually, I am more of a sadhu, even though I'm a householder, I am more of a sadhu than you. Because actually, I enjoy materially, but I perform great sacrifices. Whereas you just come along and you create dissension and disruption amongst family members. And moreover, just by renouncing alone doesn't make sure that one is fixed in renunciation. If you want to really renounce, you have to experience material pleasure first. You have to experience material pleasure, get burnt out by material pleasure, then you'll have the realization to renounce. These boys, my boys, they hadn't experienced material pleasure, and you just came along and told them to renounce. And Srila Prabhupada gives example of a pregnant woman in the purport. He says that a woman gets pregnant to have a child, and during labor she undergoes intense pain, and then she says that I shouldn't have another child again. I don't want to go through such a situation again. But then again in the future, she becomes pregnant. And Srila Prabhupada explains that material desires, the desire for sense gratification is so strong that no amount of material distress will detach us from sense pleasure. So Daksha gets so angry, he curses Narada Muni. He curses Narada Muni by saying that you shall have no place of residence in this material world. You have to keep traveling from one destination to another destination. You can't stay in one place. And Srila Prabhupada says something very interesting in that purport. I just want to read it out. He says, a preacher is known as a parivrajikacharya, an acharya or a teacher who always travels for the benefit of human society. Prajapati Daksha cursed Narada Muni by saying that although he had the facility to travel all over the universe, he would never be able to stay in one place. Right? Now look what Srila Prabhupada says. He says, in the parampara system from Narada Muni, I have also been cursed. Although I have many centers that would be suitable places of residence, I cannot stay anywhere, for I have been cursed by the parents of my young disciples. Since the Krishna consciousness movement was started, I have traveled all over the world 2 or 3 times a year. And although I am provided comfortable places to stay wherever I go, I cannot stay anywhere for more than 3 days or a week. I do not mind this curse by the parents of my disciples, but now it is necessary that I stay in one place to finish another task.
this translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. If my young disciples, especially those who have taken sannyas, take charge of traveling all over the world, it may be possible for me to transfer the curse of the parents to these young preachers. Then I may sit down conveniently in one place for the work of this translation. Srila Prabhupada is comparing him, and rightly so, to Narada Muni. Just like Narada Muni took away the sons of Daksha and made them sannyasis, Srila Prabhupada also took away the children of many parents, right, and made them brahmacharis or whatever, or full-time devotees. So Prabhupada is saying that the parents of these devotees have also cursed him not to stay in one place. Now I just want to finish by saying, how did Narada Muni react to the anger of Daksha? When Daksha was cursing Narada Muni, Srila Prabhupada says that Narada Muni was powerful to counter-curse Daksha. But he didn't. He just stood patiently and tolerated it. This is actually how devotees should react in the face of anger. We can raise our hoods, but it's not the best thing to do. Because if we're not in control of our emotions, we're going to bite someone. Right? We should do what Narada Muni is doing. He just tolerated the anger. Why did he tolerate? Srila Prabhupada explains he tolerated Daksha's anger because he wanted Daksha to vent out his anger, his rage, so much so that he would be depleted of this rage, and then he would see Narada Muni just patiently standing there and just tolerating, and then his heart would change. His heart would change. And Prabhupada gives the example of Nityananda Prabhu in this same regard, that Madai came to attack Nityananda Prabhu with a pot, right? And he smashed the pot on Nityananda Prabhu's forehead. It started to bleed. Nityananda Prabhu is capable of destroying the whole universe. He could have easily destroyed Madai. But what did he do? He just patiently tolerated. And what was the result of that? Madai, seeing the toleration of Nityananda Prabhu, after his anger had subsided, fell down at the lotus feet of Nityananda Prabhu and became a great devotee. Jagadananda and Madhavananda. Jagai and Madai became Jagadananda and Madhavananda. And explained in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Lila, that they started chanting 128 rounds every single day. And to atone for their sinful activities, they dug up a kund. They dug up a kund so that devotees could come and bathe in that kund. And they would personally clean that area of the kund. And whenever devotees would come, with straw in their mouths, they would offer their Dandavat pranams to these devotees, always chanting the holy name. So this is how we as devotees, of course, according to the level of our advancement, our capacity, should act in provoking situations. That if we can, if we are able, if someone's angry with us, we should just tolerate. And that's the best policy. Trinadapi sunichena, tarori vasahishnana, amanina manadina, kirtaniya sadari. That enables us to change the heart of the other person and enables us to peacefully chant Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll finish here. Any questions, comments? Yeah, so that's exactly what I said. So according to your capacity, according to our level of advancement in Krishna consciousness, if we're genuinely not in that level that we can just tolerate and still be peaceful, then we need to raise our hoods. Well, if someone says something to you, maybe you can just look at them with piercing eyes or something, I don't know, just to give them a warning. But the point is that when you raise your hoods, it's not that you're actually angry. You just do something just to give them an indication, stop in your tracks and stop troubling me. Now, so I gave the example of someone just raising their hand like that. So that's an example. So I'm not going to go into the details of how you should do that. Do so at your own risk. But yeah, if someone is upsetting us and we are allowing our false ego to get hurt, then we're not at that level that we can just tolerate and be peaceful. Right? So if we're at that stage where we have bodily identification, we feel like we do need to defend ourselves in whatever way, then yes, we have to. And to be honest, most of us are on that platform. So we need to come to the level of Narada Muni. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, ma'am. So here's also another example. So Prabhupada gives two examples, that in an emergency situation, one can change his varna temporarily. A Brahmana is allowed to act as a Kshatriya, okay? But in an emergency situation. The other case is that one can be so advanced in Krishna consciousness that the modes of material nature don't affect such a person, and such a person is free to act according to any way that that person likes, according to Krishna's service. For example, like I remember the book distributors, Srila Prabhupada's book distributors, his disciples, they used to give the example of a devotee called Rohini Sutta Prabhu. So Rohini Sutta Prabhu is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, one of Srila Prabhupada's really devout, great, empowered book distributors. Now, if you look at Prabhu, he's like very, very physically very thin and like that. And he didn't used to speak much like that. But when it came time to distributing books, he changed into a different person. He changed into a Kshatriya at that time. So there's an example of someone who is, we could say, Brahminical, but for the sake of Krishna's service, he took on a different role like that. So in the case of Dronacharya, what is your question? Did I answer? I don't think I answered the question. He didn't change ashram. He was still a Brahmana, but he acted in the capacity of a Kshatriya. Perhaps because he was qualified to do so. Yeah. No, he was still Brahmana. He was still a Brahmana, but acting in the capacity of a Kshatriya. Normally, he wouldn't do that. So Bhagavatam says, in an emergency situation, one can act in any other varna, capacity of any other varna. So there's two things there. One is material duty, material conditioning, and one is spiritual duty. Right? So material conditioning means that according to the modes of nature that you're conditioned by, you have to do a certain type of work. Right? So Krishna, when he's saying Shreyan Swadharma Viguna Paradharma, that it's better to do your own work according to your own conditioning rather than to do someone else's work, that's on the material platform. Now what Narada Muni is telling him is transcend your material conditioning and become Krishna conscious, become spiritual. So Prabhupada has also told us the same thing. You may have so many bad qualities, may have been so sinful, you may have had different occupations previously, you may have been a butcher, you may have been a thief, right? You may have been a murderer, but when you come to Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, stop all this. Even though you're conditioned to stealing, stop all this and chant Hare Krishna. So that's on a different platform, that's on a spiritual platform. But if we're not introducing Krishna consciousness, if we're just taking Varnashram on a material platform, if someone is a Brahmana, he should act like a Brahmana, he should not act like a Kshatriya. if he wants to get purified, he should act according to the conditioning that he has. Varna. No. So generally speaking, there's 4 varnas, right? There's 4 ashramas. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa ashram. So if you take the Grihastha ashram, the 4 varnas are contained within the Grihastha ashram. Right? So it is a Grihastha that can act as a Brahmana, Vaishya, Shudra, or a Kshatriya. Whereas a Brahmachari, he's not acting in the capacity of as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Nor is a Vanaprastha, nor is a sannyasi. So a Grihastha is. So yeah, we're talking about Varna there.